Imagine preparing for a wedding that will last for several days. There's music, singing, food, laughter, and people everywhere. Workers are rushing back and forth, making sure everything is ready. For the people of Bible times, a wedding wasn't just a few hours of celebration. It was a huge event, a time for family, friends, and an entire community to come together. And in the small town of Cana, something very special was about to happen. Jesus was coming to the wedding. His mother Mary was already there helping with the preparations. But while Mary was busy working, her thoughts were often somewhere else. She was thinking about her son. Jesus had recently been baptized, and Mary had heard about what had happened. She knew that Jesus had begun his public ministry. She also knew the promises God had made about him many years before. The angel Gabriel had told her that Jesus would be called the Son of the Highest. Mary had treasured those words in her heart. But she also remembered the warning of the prophet Simeon, that sorrow would one day touch her deeply because of Jesus. Mary didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew something else. God could be trusted. The angel had told her, with God nothing will be impossible, and now Jesus was coming. Mary couldn't wait to see him. Jesus wasn't traveling alone. Andrew, Peter, John, Philip, Nathanael, and the other disciples were following him. Only recently they had begun answering Jesus' invitation, "Follow me." As they walked together toward Cana, the disciples listened to Jesus, watched him, and talked with him, and something began to happen. Their faith grew. They were learning that following Jesus wasn't simply about hearing his words. It was about spending time with him, getting to know him, walking with him. Their friendship with Jesus was becoming stronger, and that's something we can experience too. Jesus invites us to walk with him every day, to stay close to him, listen to him, and allow him to shape our lives. The closer we remain to Jesus, the more our faith can grow. At last, Jesus arrived at the wedding. He looked across the crowd. Then he saw Mary. His mother was delighted to see him. But Mary also noticed something different. There was a new strength in Jesus' eyes. His disciples treated him with deep respect. They had seen what happened at his baptism, and they were beginning to understand that Jesus was more than a teacher. He was the promised Messiah. Mary's heart was filled with happiness. Others were beginning to recognize what she had known for years. Her son was God's son. But then, in the middle of the celebration, something went terribly wrong. The grape juice ran out. For us, that might sound like a small problem, but in that culture, it was a serious embarrassment. The groom's family was responsible for the celebration. If the refreshments ran out, the family could be humiliated, and the happy celebration could quickly come to an end. Mary heard the news, and she knew where to go. She went straight to Jesus. Quietly, she told him, "They have no wine." Jesus responded by reminding Mary that his time had not yet come. His words weren't meant to be rude or disrespectful. He was gently reminding her of something important. Jesus had a mission from his Father. He would not simply act because someone expected him to. He would act according to God's will. Mary understood. She didn't argue. She didn't pressure Jesus instead. She turned to the servants and gave them some remarkable advice. Whatever he says to you, do it. Think about that. Mary didn't know what Jesus would do. She didn't even know whether he would perform a miracle. She simply trusted him. That is what faith looks like. Faith doesn't always mean knowing the answer. Sometimes faith means trusting Jesus when you don't know what the answer will be. Jesus looked around. There were 6 large stone jars standing nearby. He told the servants to fill them with water, and they did exactly what he said. They filled the jars. Then Jesus told them to take some of the liquid from one of the jars and bring it to the host of the wedding. Imagine what that servant must have been thinking. He had filled the jar with water, so he probably expected to carry a cup of water, but when he dipped the ladle into the jar and filled the cup, it wasn't water. It was grape juice. A miracle had happened. The servant must have been speechless. He carried the cup to the host. The host tasted it, and he was amazed. It was excellent. In fact, it was the very best he had tasted. The host had no idea what had happened. He didn't know the grape juice had run out. He didn't know that Jesus had performed a miracle. He certainly didn't know that the solution to the problem had come from 6 ordinary stone jars. He simply knew that something wonderful had happened, and Jesus had quietly solved the problem. Soon, people began talking. The servants knew, the host knew, the groom knew, the guests began hearing about it. The news spread throughout the wedding. But Jesus didn't use the miracle to make himself famous. He didn't stand in the middle of the crowd and demand everyone's attention. Instead, he quietly stepped away. The disciples, however, were eager to talk about Jesus. They told people what they had seen and heard. They remembered Jesus' baptism. They remembered the things he had already done. And as they shared their stories, something happened. Their own faith grew stronger. Other people became interested in Jesus too. It's like ripples spreading across a pond. One person shares what Jesus has done. Another person hears that person tells someone else, and faith begins to spread. The disciples wanted others to experience what they had experienced, as Psalm 34 says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." They had tasted and seen that the Lord was good. Now they wanted others to discover that for themselves. Eventually, the news of Jesus' miracle traveled far beyond Cana. It reached Jerusalem. The religious leaders heard about it too. They searched the scriptures and wondered whether these events could be connected to the promised Messiah. But there was a problem. Their hearts were not open. They expected the Messiah to appear in a particular way. Surely, they thought, the Messiah would come to Jerusalem. Surely he would perform miracles for important people. Not at an ordinary wedding in a small village. But Jesus wasn't interested in impressing proud people. He could have performed a miracle simply to show off his power. He didn't. Instead, he chose to help ordinary people who needed him. And that tells us something beautiful about Jesus. He cares about ordinary people. He cares about their happiness. He cares about their problems. He cares about their faith. And he cares about you. Thanks for watching. If this blessed you, please subscribe and like to help these stories reach more people with God's love.